Hello and welcome to the Flying Reporter Members Club webinar. Today we're talking about long distance, long duration flying. We hope to get some tips and advice from those who stretch the limits of human and aircraft endurance, and I'm hoping that we can all learn something from our speakers. When you start flying greater distances or longer duration flights, spending longer in the cockpit, many new, previously unconsidered factors come into play, don't they? Fatigue, sunburn even, aching hips. Put your hands up if any of these have applied to you at any point. A dry nose and mouth, dehydration, needing the loo. I think we can all say that always happens. A sore neck where your seatbelt rubs. Then there's brain capacity, how you manage to keep on top of the plan when there's so much going on, so many routes, legs, airfields to land at and so on. So we're here with two past competitors in the Pooleys International Dawn to Dusk competition. Some might say the pinnacle of long duration, long distance flying, where entrants take off in the early hours of the morning and land back, hopefully just before sunset, stopping only for fuel and a wee break now and then, of course. So what's the secret to success of such mammoth missions? We're going to find out today. But first, perhaps you can let me know what's the longest flight you've ever undertaken. Let me know in the chat. Maybe you're just starting out and it was your first solo landaway just recently, or perhaps your most exciting mission to date has been the typical pilot pilgrimage to Le Touquet. I don't know. Maybe you've toured Scotland or Germany. Whatever your experience, let me know what's the furthest you've gone so far. And while you do that, I'll introduce our guests. Derek Pake is a seasoned Dawn to Dusker. A former air traffic controller from Ayrshire in Scotland, has competed 4 times now in the competition, and I think you've won the competition twice. Nod if that's true, Derek.
Yeah, that's
yes,
correct, John.
Twice, yeah. Normally he flies in his green and black and red RV8, which you can see on the screen, but this year competed in a Cessna 152, which I guess was a little slower and a more cramped perhaps than your RV.
Yes,
Derek has raised thousands of pounds for charity from his sunrise to sunset adventures. This year was Karen Locatelli's first Dawn to Dusk entry, and she only went and won the competition. A freshly qualified private pilot, Karen was the most inexperienced of all the entrants, but her achievement demonstrates that the Dawn to Dusk challenge is a competition that really is open to anyone. Derek and Karen, welcome to you both to the webinar tonight. Thank you for joining us. And Karen, that must have been quite something to win the competition this year. Your first entry, literally fresh out of your PPL.
Absolutely. I just couldn't believe it. But I still can't believe it, to be honest. But it was such an absolutely amazing experience from the day I thought about entering to the day I received the prize in February this year.
Now, people can hear your accent. You are French. We know this is an international competition, so people from all around the world enter, even from Australia. But you're based in the UK now, aren't you?
I am in Oxfordshire. Brilliant.
And this was kind of the theme of your Dawn to Dusk entry, your French and British connections, and we'll come on to talk about that in a minute. And Derek, this was your 4th. I think you won a trophy this year, didn't you?
Yes, the same as you, the Schnabel Challenge Trophy.
This is for the fundraising, I think. Is that right?
It doesn't quite say that on it. I think it's people who show endeavour and all that kind of stuff. I'm sure Sebastian can explain it more clearly than I can. Or I could just grab the trophy and read it. But yeah, it's a special award that's not very often handed out to people. So it was quite an honour to receive that, as I'm sure you found as well.
And also joining us, Sebastian Pooley from Pooley's Flight Equipment. Sebastian puts loads of effort into the competition every year, helping with the judging, organising the events, going through all the entries, responding to all the queries. It's quite a mammoth task, I know, Sebastian. We're going to talk about long duration, long distance flying as part of this, because I think that kind of widens the conversation out beyond those that might just be slightly interested in the Dawn to Dusk, and it might just inspire people to take part. But the competition isn't so much about the distance travelled, the endurance of the pilot. It's so much more than that, isn't it? The competition.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think it's important to note that it doesn't really matter how far you fly. It doesn't matter what your theme is. It's the planning that goes into it. It's the passion that you put into your entry. It's the quality of, as I say, the preparation, looking at the safety aspects of it. So it doesn't matter. I mean, some people have flown. I think this year there was an entry that did 22 countries across Europe between dawn and dusk. But equally, you could do a minimum of 4 hours flying, and that could take you around your neck of the woods. One of the winning entries a few years ago was the lighthouses of Devon and Cornwall. So you don't have to go too far to enjoy yourself.
Brilliant. So we'll get into the conversation proper in just a second, but I want to hear from some of you who've been writing in the chat box about where you've been and where's your longest to date. Richard Payne is on the call. I don't know if you've got your camera on, Richard. Certainly put your microphone on if you can. I don't know if you can. Are you there, Richard? They didn't know it. Yeah, hi. So you did Friedrichshafen, your first time in Europe this year.
Yeah.
How was that?
Interesting.
You lucked out though with the weather, didn't you, this year?
Tell me about it. Yeah, tell me about it. We didn't book accommodation until the morning we left because we weren't sure what was going on. Well, we were sure a couple of days ahead, but by that time it was all booked out, so we were seeing what we could get. So it was a little bit stressful.
Why was it stressful?
Well, like I said, we were supposed to book the accommodation the night before, and then the cat was thrown up, so it was like, can we even go? We could leave her on her own. So we had to book it the morning we left.
Yeah, but that's kind of typical, isn't it, of any kind of flying sortie? You know, you've always got that danger that... It's
the first time we've done accommodation for a holiday, because we were there for 4 days. I did a day at Aero, and then we did 3 days of other things. But yeah, it's the first time I booked accommodation for a holiday the morning we leave. So
has that got you interested in doing more long distance travel now and exploring Europe further? I mean, that's quite a long stretch for your first Europe trip.
Well, I always was interested in doing that. It's just, and I did actually try to do. That is hilarious. I tried to do the 2K last year. Actually, to be fair, I did actually get to French airspace. Didn't land because I rocked up and contacted Lille and said, they said, they're on lunch break. It's French preferred.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't know French. At that point, I wasn't sure if it was legal or not to land. So I scratched the better part of that. I would turn around to Lid.
Well, look, there's nothing wrong, is it, than sort of accepting that you might have ballsed up a bit and getting home rather than pressing on and trying to talk on the radio. Je m'appelle, I don't know, whatever, Richard. But well done to you. Thank you, Richard. I'll just sort of mention some other people that have done trips. We've got Ian, who's done Newcastle to La Rochelle, which is a great trip. La Rochelle, very easy to get to, almost a straight line from the south of England. So that's Ian. John has done 2 hours maximum in UK. I think it's Callie or Cal. It's done 3 hours in Sweden. 2 hours is Guy. Jürgen from Germany, longest is 2 hour 45 legs. So some people who've done some pretty good legs actually. You know, that's quite long distance flying, isn't it, in a small aircraft, 2 3/4 hours. So well done to you. And I think, Derek, when you do your dawn to dusks, you keep your legs around that sort of duration, I think, don't you? 2.5 hours max or thereabouts. Is that right?
Yeah, pretty much. I'm a gentleman of a certain age for a start, so far from a toilet. But yeah, I just find it's much easier to manage fatigue, keep yourself hydrated, have a bit of downtime where you're not concentrating all the time on the actual flight itself. Having said that, my very first dawn to dusk, we were flying around Scotland, flying around all the mountains, and on one of the legs we were going to pop into Inverness for fuel, but when we got the PPR to head up that way, they said they had no fuel available for visiting aircraft due to a shortage. There was a little airfield at Easter, which I'm sure some of you may have been to before, just a little bit north of that, but they were reporting bad weather with a thing called HAR, which is low-level fog coming in off the east coast. But we thought we'd head up, we'd give it a go. Worst came to the worst, we would finish the trip there. We got overhead Easter, and of course we couldn't see it because of the HAR. which was only about 200 feet thick, but I'm not IFR equipped and there's no ILS or anything like that on a grass airfield. So we had to make a quick decision. Did we continue with the trip, which is about another 2.5 hours flying, or did we just knock it on the head? Unfortunately, our aircraft's got quite a good EFIS in it, so it actually works out fuel burn. It gives you the endurance left. So I figured if I reduced from 160 knots cruise down to 120, it reduced my fuel burn by about a third. And we decided we could probably just make it all the way around doing that with the correct EFR reserve, of course. But what we did was we built in points along the way, go, no-go points. And if the fuel was not at a certain level, it had gone down below that, then we would have just knocked it off at that point. However, we did get all the way around. I landed at Glenforsa just as the sun set. And that was my longest ever trip, 5 hours, 20 minutes in an RV8. And we still had 45 minutes reserve left.
Well done. And
I have to say that was a time I did have sore hips.
Yeah, sore hips, because those seats are not built for sitting in for any length of time, are they? And when you get to our ages, it does start to hurt.
It was definitely one not through choice, but we figured we did want to try and do the Dawn to Dusk challenge, so we thought we'd give it a go anyway. We did it successfully in the end.
I mean, you've touched on a few things there, which I think we'll come back to. Fuel management. You did some on the fly, risk management. You were using, sort of putting in go no go points, which is hard to do when you're flying, and doing all of that replanning. A man of your caliber with 30 years air traffic control background, I'm sure you can multitask all manner of different calculations all at once whilst flying upside down, no doubt. But for us lesser mortals, I find my brain goes to mush whenever I try to do any maths in the cockpit and so on. But at least you obviously had the computer on board that helps you to some extent. But if we go back to first principles and why you started doing the Dawn to Dusk and what appeals to you about it.
I think for me, I'm sure we've all done the £100 hamburger runs, and you go to a cafe and that's it, and then you go home, that kind of thing. I've done a lot of other stuff with my flying. I try and take lots of people up who've never flown before, be they young, be they old, it doesn't matter, and basically try and put a grin on their face and get them interested in aviation. So I've done a lot of that as well. But I just found that I needed to do something else. And the Dawn to Dusk challenge, a friend had done it many years ago and said, oh, why don't you give that a go? So that's kind of how I thought, well, I'll have a look into it, see what it's all about. Went into the excellent Pooleys website and thought, yeah, I could maybe do something about that. And then I got talking with a friend who is a guy called Adam, who's climbed all the Munro Mountains in Scotland, which are the peaks over 3,000 feet. I think there's 270 of them, 280. Can't remember exactly at the moment. And he said he's actually climbed them all twice on foot, and he said it'd be quite nice to see them from the air. So I said, well, let's not just do your favorite ones. Why don't we do them all? And why don't we make it a Dawn to Dusk challenge? And that's how my very first entry into it came about.
Brilliant. And Karen, what made you want to do this?
Well, everything started in 2024. In 2024, I worked on my PPL, so started in April and finished in October. But also in the same year, I became British in June. And still on the same year, the day after Christmas 2024, I was doing some shopping online, and I came across the competition completely by chance, because I had not heard about it before. And at that time, I had 18 hours piloting command. So I had absolutely no idea if what I had in my mind was even possible or not, which was to join both Mont Saint-Michel, Mont Saint-Michael's.
What are they? Because I'm not familiar with what they are. What are these two places?
So those are two tidal islands. So one in Cornwall, St. Michael's Mount, and the other one is in Normandy, France, Mont Saint-Michel. So on that day, 26th of December, I just thought, okay, how about doing something that would represent both nationality? So linking a place in France and a place in England. And it happens that there are two tidal islands with the same name. So I just thought, is it even possible with a Cessna 172 to link them? I had no idea. I had so many questions. And this is what made it so interesting, because it kept me very, very busy and very excited for the following 7 months, trying to plan for such a challenge at my level.
So you've got the Southern England half-mil chart behind you. Can you point? Yes. Can you point to St Michael's?
Yes,
we didn't rehearse this, but whereabouts is?
So I left from Wickham. I went down. This is Normandy. Yeah. And Mont Saint-Michel is just south of Guernsey. Mm-hmm. And then I crossed the Channel Island control zone, and St. Michael's Mount is here in Cornwall. Then I landed at Perranporth, and for my third flight, I linked Perranporth back to Wickham.
Wow. And, you know, I mean, most people get a few hours under their belt before they do some kind of direct sea crossing like that. That's a lot of water in one go. I mean, even I know I'm going across the Atlantic, just less than 2 weeks' time. But nonetheless, I play it quite safe across the English Channel. I normally go across the shortest bit. You've gone across the longest bit by the looks of it.
Yeah, yes. But even though I had to go from Normandy to Cornwall, the fact that I was going overhead Jersey and Guernsey was kind of limiting the risk somehow. But yeah.
And you did this, was it in a 172, was it? Did you say?
Yes, Cessna 172, yes.
Okay. And what you said, you spent 7 months, you didn't know, you had lots of questions. So give me some examples of some of the things. I mean, maybe aside from airspace stuff, because, that's kind of the stuff we all sort of face, I suppose. The Channel Islands control zone is a bit funky, isn't it? And there's that to get through. But what else were you sort of considering and thinking about?
Well, so when I had my idea in December, I hadn't crossed the channel at all. I hadn't gone anywhere more than an hour away. I had 18 hours P1, so that's really nothing. So every month I built a little bit more. So I challenged myself to always land at a different place. So I went to Lyon-Solent, different places. At some point I went to Perranporth in a Cessna 152, so that was nearly 2 hours each leg. That was already some good practice. And then I had to do a cross-channel check with an instructor to be allowed to then do it on my own. So this cross-channel was to go to Le Touquet, which was a fantastic place to go to. It's really nice. I highly recommend it. And the week after, I went to Le Touquet on my own.
That's brilliant. I mean, that's kind of, you're doing everything that all of us have done, or all of us will do over the course of maybe 2 or 3 years. You've kind of done it all in one go, getting yourself ready for this big mission. And then the day itself then, so how long were you flying? How long were your legs? What altitudes were you crossing at? And what was the weather like?
Okay, so 3 legs. The shortest one was the first one. We come to Cherbourg. I landed at Cherbourg to refuel, to make sure that I had max capacity, because the second leg was actually the longest one. So the second leg took me 3 hours. The first one took me above an hour. I can't remember exactly. During the day, I did fly for 6.6 hours, so in 3 flights. Sorry, what were your other questions?
The altitude and the weather.
Okay, so the weather wasn't the perfect weather, but of course, when you have to cross the water, when you have such a large area, it's very, very difficult to have great weather everywhere. So you have to mitigate, right? But it was still very good. It was still good enough. Altitude. Unfortunately, I wasn't. I was planning to really fly as high as possible over the water, but I was limited with clouds. But probably about I managed 4,000 feet on the crossing.
So you picked up on an interesting point there about long distance flying, and the weather can't be perfect everywhere.
Yes.
And that's something that when you start going further, that's the reality, isn't it, that you have to get used to, is that, you know, if we're used to going an hour to go and have a burger somewhere, you know, we can be pretty sure that the TAFs and the METARs and the F214s or whatever are all going to be fine. You know, we can pick our day and go. But like you say, you know, over longer distances, you've got room for 1 or 2 fronts to pass through, and
exactly.
Everything.
So I had many alternates planned, even though there were places that I never been before, but I still studied them before going, just in case I had to divert. And of course, I had packed an overnight bag because, yes, in case I was unable to finish all those flights during the day.
Yeah, overnight bags. I've been caught out. You wouldn't believe the number of times that I've gone somewhere thinking, oh, I'll be home tonight. And then, of course, I have to do an emergency run to the local supermarket to get underwear and toothbrushes and things. Sounds like you were well prepared for that thing.
Well, I was flying on my own, so I really needed to be on the point. Because there was nobody sitting next to me to take the commands if I was gonna start to feel tired or something. So I was really monitoring myself.
And you talked about sort of having all the alternates researched and planned for, and this comes to my point during the introduction about brain space, brain capacity, memory capacity. Now we can all keep in mind the circuit of arrival and the circuit of departure. But when you are landing at 3 or 4 airfields, and then you add onto that 3 or 4 diverts potentially, that's, you know, getting on for 10 airports and circuits and quirky procedures that they've all got. It's impossible for the human to remember all of those things. So did you have like a big file in the cockpit with you with all the details? Probably the Pooleys guide. I can see Sebastian eyeing up the opportunity here to mention the Pooleys guide, of course, which is great, a great resource to just pull up for those things. But did you carry anything else with you to help you with those things?
Yes, so I had to have 2 charts with me because just as a point, because the south of England one doesn't show all the area for France. So all the paper, I had SkyDemon as a backup. I really wanted to do everything the old-fashioned way, but of course you don't do something like that without SkyDemon or equivalent.
It's all right. We'll get you converted to doing it all on the iPad very soon. Don't you worry, because that is the reality of it. And I'll come on to Derek now, if I may, Karen. We'll come back to you. But Derek, this sort of this idea of long distance flying and doing it old school. Now, am I right in thinking well? Tell me how you do it. Do you do a plog? Do you mark it all out on the chart? How do you do it? Or do you are you as brave as Karen to do it that way? Or do you take advantage of all the modern tech these days, your onboard computers, your iPads and everything to make this happen?
I do put it all on the chart and print out the plug. However, they sit in the back of the airplane. I've never actually got them out once. It is all done through SkyDemon.
Yeah.
A on an iPad, B is my phone as a backup, and I also input into the aircraft EFIS, the SkyDemon route as well. So I've got 3 different systems, hopefully of getting around. But it's all done electronically. I mean, when you take the second time one, which was the Roman thing, there was something like 800 waypoints, so there's no way you could put all those in a plug or on the chart. So for those, I just did a generic line, the rough area that was falling, and particularly taking account of controlled airspace and the airfields I was going to, rather than each individual waypoint. And then I was just kind of cross-referencing the iPad and the phone to make sure I flew over the waypoint. But what I also did for each waypoint is printed out a sat nav map of them as well, so you could see what the ground features were, so you knew exactly which waypoint to head for.
Wow.
And what the physical features were for that waypoint, so that you didn't miss it.
I mean, how long have you?
Because of weather, but generally speaking, we overflew most of the waypoints that we wanted to.
How long have you been flying now, Derek?
I learned to fly in 1982. I've had a few 5-year hiatuses when the children were young and money had to go on other things. I've probably had 10 years when I've not been flying in the various points, but generally about 30 years experience, I would reckon.
So I'm impressed that you still even went through the rigmarole of having a plug. It was printed off SkyDemon, was it, or was it one that you wrote out yourself? Yeah. And having the charts back there, because it does become very difficult to work to those old methods on the longer flights. It's a lot of effort. It's a lot of effort to do, and if you're crossing borders and things, the charts look different. They display things different. If you go into France, even you'll know this, Karen. Pick up a French chart, very different from the NATS charts for the UK, and it's just like it's alien. It's a bit alien to you, isn't it? And so at least on the iPad, you've got some kind of consistent form of data that is easy to reference. So. Talk about, actually, let's come back to that point about keeping all that aeronautical information in your head. And how do you do, because this is quite hard, isn't it? If you've got an autopilot, then you can probably brief yourself quite easily, can't you, ahead of the next landing place and rebrief. Presumably you do the same as Karen. You will study everything, you'll read all the information, the airport website, the AIP, the SkyDemon stuff, the Pooleys guide. You'll read all of that in advance, but then, do you find it difficult, like I do, to sort of keep it all in mind, remember everything? Do you find that quite hard as well?
Well, the good thing is I do have an autopilot, so that does make it easy to cross-refer to things, which is particularly good. But yeah, like Karen, I printed stuff out, I did all the research, and then what I do is before every leg, I pre-brief with usually my partner that flies with me isn't a pilot anyway, but I just run through with them what I'm thinking about, what the diversion options are, what the controlled airspace aspects are, all that kind of stuff. Just a very quick walkthrough of what the flight is going to be like, hopefully, and from that I can then get in my head what it is I need to do, where and when, and what kind of things I'm expecting as I get further up the route, particularly for landing airfields, frequencies, that kind of thing. I'm not storing it all in my head, but I'm just running through it one more time before I actually get airborne, so that when I'm airborne, I've got the sequence half buried in my head already, and then I just cross-refer to the SkyDemon or the charts as I go along to make sure that I'm not missing anything.
Sebastian, how much weight is given to the pilot who does everything old school versus those who use all the latest tech and gizmos to get them around? Because you could just program this into an autopilot, sit back and let it fly your dawn to dusk for you.
Absolutely. So yes, absolutely, it's taken into consideration, as is the experience of the pilot and the crew, as is the fact whether you're doing it solo or you're doing it as part of a crew of 2, but sometimes even 3 or 4, and people are rotating through the aircraft during the course of the day. So it's all taken into consideration by the judges, it all counts towards the final sort of feeling and score of the entry.
And by what criteria are the judges measuring the value, the success of an entrant? I mean, I know that you will award different awards to different categories. You know, I think best video, as you say, fundraising. I don't know, the best. We'll come on to some the things. The entrants have to fill out a log or have to present a log, which is a visual representation of the entry, and we'll come on to that in a minute because that's a whole thing in its own right. I mean, that when I entered, that took me by. I couldn't believe the amount of work that had to go into that bit of it. But generally speaking, you know, for a winning entry, what have you got? Which boxes have you got to tick, do you think?
So again, think about the planning. Think about the planning that goes into it. Think about the experience of the crew. Think about the safety aspects of the flight. So have they really thought through, you know, what the flight entails, what equipment they're going to bring with them, you know, if they're going over water, you know, have they got everything they need for those flights? A big thing over the last 10 years, threat and error management. You know, we talked earlier, both Derek and Karen talked about, you know, having backups. So, you know, your original question was about, do people just rely on SkyDemon? Absolutely. I would say that almost every entry mentions SkyDemon at some point or another. Tim Dawson is actually one of the judges, so it's, you know, it's
extra points are given then if they
extra
do.
Points, obviously, I'm sure he gives extra points for using his kit. But actually, you know, it is a challenge, and therefore, to your point, do people enjoy using traditional navigation techniques? Absolutely. And there are some fascinating entries where people have completely ignored the technology. They've had it there to record the flight because they need to make sure that they've covered all the points. But they're using a pen and a chart, and they're plotting it from scratch. So that is also taken into consideration. But a winning entry, definitely something that has pushed the limits of the pilot. So in Karen's case, she did something that that was extraordinary for somebody who had so few hours. And that gave her a huge advantage over somebody who, for instance, a crew that did 22 countries, got a Guinness World Record. But they are a very experienced crew with a high number of hours, so it's all taken into consideration.
Yeah, was Karen I talk about least experience, but the lowest hours pilot to enter the Pooleys international?
So actually, we had an entry from Belgium, and the gentleman and lady actually individually had lower hours, but the total for the two of them was higher than Karen's. So and also, you know, if you're doing an entry solo, that is something, especially. I mean, you mentioned going on to talk about the log. You know, that in itself needs photographs from the flight. So, you know, you've got to navigate, communicate, but you've also got to be taking photographs of what you're passing. So it is, you know, solo flying is a challenge for sure.
So we heard that Karen's mission was all about linking these two tidal islands in France and England. Derek, what about your missions? You've entered it 4 times now. How do you decide what you're going to do? You know, where do these ideas come from? And tell us about the 4 ideas that you've done, sort of briefly for me. Sum them up. What you've done in the past.
Okay, generally they'll come from something I've got an interest in already, either through things that I've seen, places I've been, or what friends have told me. So, as I said, my original one was flying around all the Munro mountain tops in Scotland, because my friend had said he quite liked to see them. My second one is I've got a house in Ireland, and I've been there quite a lot, traveling around. And one time I found this big whitewash marker made of stones on one of the headlands there, and it had the name Éire on it, which is the Irish word for Ireland, with a number. I knew nothing about these, went and researched them, and found out they were actually navigational markers for airmen used during World War II. There was 83 of them. There's probably about 30 of them left. So I figured, why don't I circumnavigate Ireland, fly around the coast and fly over each of the waypoints, each of the lookout posts and each of the markers. So that's how the second one came about. And the third one, myself and my co-owner of the aircraft, we decided to do an aerial survey for somebody, which was looking at Roman forts in the borders area of Scotland. We did it in winter, so they all stood up very nicely, all the foundations and all that kind of thing. So the next year I thought, it'd be quite good to do the Romans journey, wouldn't it? Not just in Scotland, though. So what I did was I flew down to Southend. We started at Dover, which is round about where the Romans first landed. We followed all the Roman roads all the way up through England, Hadrian's Wall, up through Scotland, and then up as far as they got, away up in the north of Scotland, basically travelling over all the Roman sites that I could find, either from Ordnance Survey maps, from research on the internet, through books, all that kind of stuff. And then this year, because I had, or last year rather, a slower aircraft, I couldn't go quite as far. So what I just decided to do was circumnavigate Scotland and go and visit all the World War I and World War II seaplane and airship bases, but also a few little Easter eggs along the way with Scottish aviation history that's not connected to those two items as well, that we found out just through research and local knowledge and talking to people. So that's kind of how they come about. Just I get a kernel of an idea and then I just run with it.
I mean, sometimes when you're sort of doing things from above, I'm trying to think of, places I recently, not long ago, I think last year or the year before, I kind of decided I'd fly over all the castles between Haverfordwest and I want to say Shobden. And there's loads of little castles along there, and I set myself a challenge to find them on my route, and it was great fun. And it really added value. This was just going to be a flight from A to B. I just needed to get there. There was no other reason. I just needed to get there. And I thought, well, I'll make this interesting. I'll see if I can find these places. And then I looked them up on Wikipedia and found out the history of them all, and then had to find them. And they're harder to find than you might imagine, actually, little castles. But sometimes things from above, as I said, are not easy to find. And B, perhaps don't look as dramatic as you think they might do from above, and might not sort of come out well in photographs. Have you kind of been let down in that respect, where you've either not found something that you sought, or when you got there it was a bit of a letdown in terms of what it looked like?
I don't think I've ever been let down, because there's always interesting to see the ground from the air and the land and how everything's laid out. But there are one or two times when, particularly in some of the Irish ones, where there was supposedly an air marker there, but it had all been overgrown with grass, so all you could see was grass. You knew it was there somewhere, and certainly we flew right over it. And even looking back through video footage, because I put a couple of cameras under the wings, we still couldn't see it. So that's just one that's obviously disappeared in time. Used to be there, it's gone now, but we did actually fly over it. So I have had things like that. There was another interesting one, which was one of them out on one of the Aran Islands off the west coast of Ireland, which was actually a whitewashed set of stones, which is still there, but it's on a limestone pavement. So it's like, white stones on a white rocky background. So that one, we had to orbit a couple of times to find that, but we did find it in the end. Some of the Roman remains are really, really good to see from there, because you can see all the foundations and all the layout, whereas if you were on the ground, you would see nothing, maybe a ditch or a trench, and you'd have no idea what that actually was. But from the air, they are particularly good to find. There aren't that many of them, obviously, now, because modern things, we've built roads on the Roman roads, we've built cities over their cities, all that kind of thing. But there are still one or two out there, particularly as you get further north and into the wild borderlands of Scotland and England, where you can actually see where the Romans were and where they marched, where their camps were, all that kind of stuff. So it's really interesting to see that. And again, for the seaplane and airship one, again, there's a lot of stuff, infrastructure you can see from the air that's no longer in use and has been long gone. But you can maybe see a hangar base, which if you saw from the ground would just look like a bit of waste ground. But from there, you can say, yeah, that's the shape of a hangar, and it's right next to where that seaplane base was. So it's pretty good state from there.
Coming back to maybe some of the broader themes and ideas and thoughts about long distance, long duration, mission flying, we might want to call it, which is what you're doing here. Things that can apply to anyone flying longer distances, the sort of takeaway points. You mentioned fatigue, and you managed that, you say, by sort of keeping legs to sort of 2.5 hours, also for sort of, human comfort as much as anything else as well. But do you find yourself getting tired through the day? What have you learnt about yourself as a pilot from doing these long flights? Because I think you do learn a lot about yourself. You learn your limits, your limitations, your limits,
yeah, for sure,
and everything. So what have you learned, and what would you say about those things?
I think the important thing is to try and self-check yourself all the time, or if you're flying with somebody else, you know, have not constant conversation, but regular conversation, you know, two-way things like that. Also, I'm an air traffic controller, so our brains are always going all the time. So I'm always thinking about things, looking ahead, and perhaps flying along between one waypoint and the next and going, oh, there's something over there. I wonder what that is. And then, you know, putting that in my brain as to, I'll have to go and have a look when I get down on the ground and see what that building or what that castle was, that kind of stuff. So just trying to keep things of interest, keep your mind active. Also doing all your fuel calculations, your monitoring, all that kind of stuff. FRIDA checks, I've got a thing built into Skybeam and it does me a FRIDA check every 20 minutes. So that gives me a little thing in the phone that pops up. So again, that's a little alarm clock, if you like, to say, right, you need to do something. So you're just trying to keep the brain active. If you do feel tired at all, then just divert and land somewhere. That's always my plan B. If I feel that I'm not quite up to things and things are getting behind, then I would just think, right, that's it. I'm starting to get a bit too far. We'll just dive into here, have a quick cup of tea, and then get back airborne again. Fortunately, I've never needed to do that, but it's always there in the back of my mind as an option. I find personally, I don't get particularly fatigued until I've finished it at the end of the day, and then I just want to collapse in a heap, because that's when the adrenaline stops and you get back to normal, and you then realize you've been flying for 8 hours and you've been away for 12 hours, and it's been quite a long day.
It's everything on top of the flying that people don't realise, isn't it? It's the getting to the airport. It's the waiting for the weather to clear so you can take off. It's the wind that's blowing at you, that's draining all the energy out of you. It's the cold even. There's so much more. It's not just the 8 hours flying. It's the whole day, the whole experience, the drive to and from the airport even.
I think the other thing is, and I'm sure everybody who's here has suffered at one time or another, is you need to allow more time than you think, because you get to the airport and you think, right, I've got an hour before we're going to airborne. We've got time for lunch, and then there's a big queue in the cafe, or the toasting machine's not working, or whatever. The refueler guy's away on his lunch, so that's you running into, 2 hours, hour and a half. So then, of course, the whole day is starting to push to the right a little bit. And then you've got to work out, particularly if you're doing a long flight, am I going to get back before dark? Are the airfields that I'm going to later on actually still going to be open? Which is a particular problem up in Scotland. Places like Oban may be shut at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. So if that's my last refueling stop, I need to be there by 4, because otherwise I'm going to have to land somewhere that I won't have fuel, possibly an overnight, and then dive into Oban later on in the day. So little things like that can all add up, and time really does get eaten up very quickly before you even notice it.
And also, flying around Scotland has its own challenges, not least, the opening hours of airports, but they're much fewer and further between than they are down here in the south of England. And so your margins and your reserves need to take account of that, I think. And I've flown with people from the south who've flown up in Scotland, and it's quite sobering to see that they hadn't quite realised how far places were from each other, and your nearest fuel place or your nearest airfield even can be quite some distance, even up 45 minutes, an hour away.
Yeah, that's pretty much true. The biggest issue in Scotland, though, is fuel. You really have got to plan that in advance as to where you're going to go. You need to check the airfield that they've got fuel, because let's say you go up to the north of Scotland, up to Inverness, for example, like in the trip I did, and they've no fuel. Well, what are you going to do? You're not going to get anywhere until you get fuel in, unless you've got more gas and you can nip down the garage if you're in a microlight. But certainly in the aircraft, I'm sure most of us fly where you're looking for avgas. If there's no avgas, you're stuck there until you get some, which you really got to think about that. And as I say, I always phone them up in advance, make sure they've got it, make sure that the opening times are what I think they are. Because sometimes the AIP is not entirely up to date. Sometimes they're closed for other reasons. Sometimes there's a NOTAM that you misread, which I did last year. So we actually got to Oban. It was one of those NOTAMs that lasted several days, and it had a different day of the week, had different times. But I just looked at the headline timing of the NOTAM. So I thought they shut at 5. We got in about 10 to 4, and he said, no, we shut at 4. So we had to basically do a Formula One refuel and get off the airfield and into Glenforsa. So little things like that can catch you out. I'd done all my planning. I'd got in my own head that, yes, it shuts at 5, so we're all going to be fine. There's no rush. We should have been there about 3 on kind of normal planning, but as I said earlier, things eat into your time. So we're running about an hour late, but we weren't that worried because we thought, well, it shuts at 5, no big issue. And then when I called them up to get the airfield information 10 minutes out, he said, you do know we close in 10 minutes. It's okay. So, but again, if the worst had happened and we had to leave the airplane there, I could probably have had enough fuel to get back to Prestwick with reserves, but it would have been a wee bit tight. The other option is I could have gone into Cumbernauld, Glasgow, somewhere like that. So there's always a plan B. It just would have meant that the Dawn to Dusk challenge would have had to terminate at that point, and we may not have been able to do all the stuff that we did later on.
Yeah. Reminded me to think about Press-on-itis, which I'll ask Karen about maybe. And also, you were talking about NOTAMs enclosures. Now, you might set off at dawn and you might have been flying for 4 hours or whatever, and the airport that you're planning to land at later in the day, they've come in and found that the fueling system's gone wrong, and then they put out a NOTAM whilst you're airborne, and things change. It's you kind of got to be ready for it. And but Karen, talking about Press-on-itis, this was a big deal for you. This was something you really, really wanted to do. Yes. You planned for it for 7 months. You'd rehearsed it in its individual steps. And then did you think consciously about how you wouldn't succumb to the urge to carry on regardless of the evidence that was coming against you if that had happened?
Yes, it was a very, very, very big possibility that my plan, I couldn't execute all of my plan because it was such a massive challenge. So all the way through, not even just on the day, but the weeks before, I was very, very conscious that this might never happen, or at least not in 2025, for so many reasons. For example, in June, I tried to land to Cherbourg just to rehearse the crossing of the channel, and I didn't get the PPR on that day because it was not available for some D-Days celebrations. Yes, many things could happen and make it that okay, I can't finish, and it's okay, right? You still want to continue to fly. You don't want to take. You accept a certain amount of risk, I suppose, but you have to be very true to yourself and not take more than you can cope with, probably.
And that's I think maybe something that becomes, I don't know, I could be wrong here, but maybe that's a skill that comes the more experience you get at flying. You've had more experience, you've had more near misses, probably, dare I say it. You've got yourself into weather situations. You might have had a stronger crosswind than you've ever had before, and you've expanded your skill. But as a newly qualified PPL, being forced to make those decisions, yes, you can say to yourself, I'm not going to get drawn into doing this no matter what. I will make a sensible decision. But you don't have a lot of experience on which to base that. And you've probably not been in the situation before where you've felt that urge to want to finish something and complete something as a flying mission, and had to make that difficult decision whether to stop or go. So good on you, I think, for for doing it, and at such a at such low hours, I think. So yeah, and are you planning to do another one now? Now you've, because you will have had the lovely dinner at the RAF club, and once you've been there once, you have to go back again.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I definitely want to go again. That was an amazing evening. Absolutely. But yes, I've got ideas, not for this year, but I certainly want to enter again. Yes.
Good. So what we'll do is we'll come back to Sebastian if we can, and just get the sort of the nuts and bolts of all of this. If you've listened to Karen and Derek talk about their challenges and missions, what are the nuts and bolts of actually doing this? What does it involve? What are the entry requirements and everything? And then we'll come back to Karen and Derek at the end, just finally. And if you have any questions now, if you're on the Zoom call, pop your hands up. Because I've been listening so intently to Karen and Derek, I haven't myself been able to keep across the chat, which has been very busy on YouTube. But if you had a question, and you're watching us on the YouTube stream, if you could repeat that now, pop that in the chat, and I will then find it, because it will be right at the bottom here. But Sebastian, the nuts and bolts of this then, is there a minimum hours requirement? Do you have to have special insurance on the plane? Do you have to pay to enter? What are the what's the minimum amount of flying that you have to do in one day? What are the nuts and bolts of it?
Okay, well, before I give you those, I'm going to go back to two things that Derek and Karen said. One, which was, once you've done the Dawn to Dusk, you do come back and do it again and again and again. And I think the experience is so good that, there's one team or one guy who's now done it over 10 times. So I'm delighted here that Karen's going to come and do it again. And obviously Derek's done it 4 times, and I have no doubt that there will be many more to follow. So nuts and bolts. It is free to enter. Pooleys does a certain amount of sponsorship for the event, of course, so there are no entry fees. No, there's no additional insurance as far as I'm aware, but please, that's not my area of expertise, so do check with your aircraft insurer. What else have we got, John? In order to enter, go onto the Pooleys website. There is a how to enter section for the Dawn to Dusk on the Dawn to Dusk pages. You can read about what the entry requirements are. We've really tried to relax the rules from what they were a few years ago to try and make it as easy as possible for people to enter. So it used to be a minimum of 8 hours, but now it's only 4 hours flight time. We obviously have 2 entrants here who are flying fixed wing, but if you have a helicopter, if you have a microlight, if you have a balloon, we've had a balloon entry.
We've got a balloon. I know we've got a balloon pilot watching, so I can because I know somebody on the chat there. Chris, this is for you. Dawn to Dusk.
Noted. Thank you.
You got to enter it this year. Sorry, Sebastian, carry on.
So yes, it doesn't matter what your aircraft is. It doesn't matter where you are in the world. We've had entries last year from Australia, from Canada, France, Belgium. We've had them in the past from New Zealand, South Africa. So you just tend to do it in a different time of year because you're in a different hemisphere. What else, John? What else can I tell you? So the first thing is, yes, go to the website. There is also a list of previous themes from all the winners over the last, the competition has been going since 1964, so 60 plus years. There's also the full list of all the trophies and the winners of those trophies from last year. So Derek won the Schnabel Challenge Cup. It's not necessarily for fundraising, it's actually for people who set a benchmark. So John, you set a benchmark of fundraising when you did your challenge, which was huge. And I didn't expect it to be beaten for some time, and trust Derek to come in steaming after you a year later and beat it. But it's and again, the charity aspect, a lot of people do add a charitable aspect to their entry, but it's not necessary. But it's I guess it's a nice thing to add on. It adds a little something to the entry. There's a form to fill in on the Pooleys website. Fill in the form, send it back to us. You'll need to think about your theme. Derek and Karen obviously touched on their themes. Often they can be very, very personal, or they could be related to your family or friends. They could be an anniversary, for instance. So the theme is important. It's helps you enjoy your entry because you're doing it around something that you actually love and enjoy. And go away and plan it. Go and do the minimum 4 hours flying. And then, as you alluded to earlier, John, you've then got to write a log. Now, there are differences in logs, and the minimum requirement is only 1,000 words. Now, Derek, I think it's fair to say, has written some amazing logs, which I think could be put into a library and could be read for years to come on the subjects that he's covered. There was an entry many, many years ago from Canada, which talked about fur trappers. And the Duke of Edinburgh, who was a judge for, at least 50 years, he thought it was such a good entry that he insisted it be put in at the University of Montreal in their library for people to see. So there are some incredible entries, logs with incredible detail, but that's not necessary, and what we often find again is that people enter it for the first time, produce a log, and then when you come to the dinner and you've been there, John, you've seen all the logs laid out, you see what everybody else has done, and they say, okay, now I understand, and they come back the next year and they do something a little bit different, a little bit improved. But at the end of the day, it is definitely the taking part that counts. And I don't know anybody who's taken part in the competition that hasn't thoroughly enjoyed the experience.
Yeah, and it is a great thing. The log was hard work. It was hard work, and a lot of effort has to go into that. And yeah, you kind of think the day's flying is kind of the hard part. No, I'd say that the log was the hardest part of it. And I think you kind of require people to kind of keep records. So you want to see their tracks, don't you? You want to see their plogs. You want to see. I think I could do. Did you ask for fuel receipts and things? I can't remember.
Yeah, fuel receipts, and also a photograph of the time that you take off and the time that you land, with a date stamp on it or date and time stamp on it. So we know that it's official start and finish times.
Right. John Chamberlain asks, are there an increasing number of microlights taking part now that we've got this new size category, weight category?
I haven't seen any evidence that the new weight category has made a difference. We've always had plenty of microlight entrants. I have to say that although, and I hope Karen will show it to us all in a moment, she has the the Duke of Edinburgh trophy with her, but I think the microlight trophy I think it's the biggest one of all of them, and it's pretty hefty. So
there's something wrong about that. That's back to front, isn't it? I mean, you couldn't take it in the cockpit with you, probably.
Probably not. I think it put the weight and balance right out. But we've definitely had a lot of microlight entries over the years, and again, they come back time and again. So yeah.
Karen is showing us her trophy. Derek, I hope you've got yours to hand as well. I want to see your trophy as well. Karen, this is the? Oh, that's lovely. Don't drop it though, will you? Because it's it. And then Derek's got his. I don't know if you can see that on the chat because it's just quite small on my screen here. But Derek and Karen are showing up their trophies. Fantastic. So Derek, this year, are you planning? What's your plans? You can't stop now. You've done 4. What's your plan for this year?
Well, at the moment, my current airplane is out of service for probably the next couple of months. So it depends when that gets back, whether it's going to be a mammoth expedition again, or I'll probably enter an Cessna 152 again if I can't do that, and see if I can do something a bit shorter. But I'm probably 99% certain I'll be back.
Karen, you were not quite decided yet, I know, but the sort of final question to you, I think, is what did you learn? Because flying is always learning, isn't it? You're always learning something new. What did you learn about yourself, flying, planning, airspace? What was it that you took away, the big thing?
All of the above. Yes, planning is everything, is absolutely important. and then trust yourself. If something doesn't feel right, then it's just a no-go. And replan and hope for better weather or better conditions. Or
Absolutely. Well, Sebastian, Karen, Derek, thank you so much for joining us on the call today. Thanks to you as well at home for watching and joining us and taking part. I hope you enjoyed the webinar. If you want to join us for the next one, now normally these are Members Club only webinars. We hold these every month. And Members Club members can get access to them. We open this up a bit wider because I love the Dawn to Dusk and I want as many people as possible to take part in it, so we made it public. But if you've liked the chat, if you've just enjoyed spending time with us this evening, we do these monthly, and to join those you'll need to become a member of the Flying Reporter Members Club. It's a service on Patreon. You can find out how to join on the Flying Reporter website, www.flyingreporter.co.uk, or just search for the Flying Reporter, and I think my name comes up when you do that. As you know, I'm also setting off myself on a pretty big mission. I was thinking of making it a Dawn to Dusk, Sebastian, because the sun doesn't set at this time of year in Greenland and Iceland, and I thought I could pretty much go for goodness knows how long. But the challenge of crossing Greenland and Iceland and the Atlantic Ocean was kind of a big enough challenge in itself, rather than put myself under any other pressure. So I made the decision not to do that this year. So I'm sorry about that. But again, I set off in just less than 2 weeks now, and I'll be updating my members on the Supporters Club, the Members Club, with daily vlogs from that mission. We'll be putting some stuff on Facebook as well, and then the content comes out on the main YouTube channel from July. We'll have episodes fortnightly from that mission to take my PA-28 across the Atlantic. Again, thank you ever so much for joining us this evening. Take care, everyone. Fly safely, and we'll see you for the next one in a month's time. Bye for now.